Hello everybody, my name is Jeff H. Malum and welcome to the first episode of my Authors podcast. Right, I am an author, actually a newcomer author. At the time of publishing this podcast, I have currently released 2 books, which are both short novels of a series called Backfire. I will talk about it later. Not sure if it's going to be today as well, but definitely in another episode. Actually, at the day of capturing this or recording this episode of the podcast, my second book has just been released a couple of hours ago. However, this is not everything I wrote and everything I am going to write. Backfire is not my whole author's life. Let me start differently. Let me start at how did I become an author? Why did I become an author? And what does it mean to me? And how does it feel? How does it change my everyday life? And what are my plans for the future? This is what I want to cover today. I don't think I want to go into detail with certain concepts or certain stories, so I'm not like gonna speak in detail about Backfire, the 2 published books so far, or any other books that are planned to release in the future, at least not in detail. So let me start by telling you that I'm currently 23 years old, which is, well, hopefully not that old. And I've actually been writing for quite a while now. Actually, I have started writing, in quotation marks, ever since I was around 8 years old. But back then it was obviously not yet something of that extent. So I did not really write books or something like that. No, instead, as a kid, I was a big fan of video games. I played a lot of video games and I watched my siblings play lots of video games. And I always got so immersed in the stories. Like, I really loved them, and whenever a game was finished, I was like so disappointed that the story was over there. So I always made plans in my head for a sequel and a sequel to the sequel and a sequel to the sequel to the sequel, because I wanted every story to go on forever. I had so many ideas in my head that I wanted to share, but obviously I was a kid and I could not really share these ideas in a big way. And of course it was unrealistic to make these ideas actually become something. Back then my father changed his job, and as, I don't know, kind of a goodbye gift from the previous one, he got like tons and tons of notebooks, like not electrical, but paper notebooks. And I took like 100 of them, and each of them became one, well, kind of diary for each project idea that I had in mind. And I surely had at least 50 to 60 of these idea sheets. Of course, I was a kid, and your concentration stops quite quickly as a kid, and so do your ideas. And these note sheets never had more than 20 pages. Also, since I was a kid, well, it was, when I later found them again, so hard to read or to understand what I wanted to say with so many things. But I had these ideas, I wrote them down, and started quite early. And actually I pursued these ideas for a very, very long time, or these approaches of creating ideas and stories. When I was I guess in my 5th year of school, Me and two other buddies, or was it just one of them? I'm not too sure if the third one did it as well. But well, definitely me and one good friend, we created short, very, very short stories and video games through the program Microsoft Office PowerPoint. Of course, this was not a good method to create video games, but it was possible because you could hyperlink different pages of the presentation. So if it was like a dialogue and you had 3 dialogue options, then you could click one of them and get redirected to, well, to page 51 where this dialogue option would continue and so on. So it was a good thing to, well, create concepts, but obviously not video games. Back then, my big dream was always to, well, become a creator of video game stories. However, the more time passed, the more I realized that this is just not realistic, because for creating a video game, there's so much more to it. You don't just need the writer who gives the story and the ideas and maybe tells you how this and that aspect of gameplay works, but you need someone who programs that. You need someone who designs it, both in a logical way as well as in an artistic way. So you need graphic designers, sound designers, composers, and so on and so on. And, well, so many people who put this all together. And I never was interested in learning that stuff. I was always bad at visual or acoustic arts, so I could never draw properly. I could never, I don't know, play instruments well, or I also had no understanding of the technical things behind it. So I could never really like program a code. Like I know some HTML for creating websites and stuff, but I could never ever create a video game in a whole. Like I used softwares like RPG Maker. That's quite popular, but this was never finished because creating a video game as one person, that is a whole lot of work. And if you are, I don't know, having a job or being at university or whatever, it's just impossible. And at the time you're still in school, well, let's be honest, your like quality level is not as what it should be to create a good video game in the end. So the more time passed, I realized it probably won't ever work like that. And I needed another way of expressing my ideas. At first, I was honestly planning on creating a kind of TV show for YouTube, because I have a friend who has some access to, well, good cameras and stuff like that, because he works in that environment, and, well, he really has access to good equipment. And I actually got some friends to say, yeah, sure, I will play a role. But in the end, this whole idea also in my head turned out to be so unprofessional. Like if you would just, collect 10 friends and tell them you are acting as this and that, it won't be good. It will be fun for sure, but it just won't be good. Also, what about the effects and what about, publishing it? And there's also more to it, and not just cameras. You also there need sound design and visual arts and so on and so on. I could write the script, and I don't know, probably could get people to do that for me, like acting and stuff. And but I quickly realized that this also won't be my way of expressing my ideas. So I kept thinking and thinking and thinking, and then around 2010, I don't know, I felt like, no, I was, right, this was when I was reading the German book Faust for the first time, so Goethe's Faust, and I kind of realized, hey, this might be a medium to at least, well, save my ideas, to store them in a way where they could always stay. So I started writing down my ideas of those stories in exactly the way Faust was written. So with this almost script-like thing, you know? Not too many descriptions about how people feel or how things and areas look like, but just, you know, the dialogue and some description, what happens, how it is in Faust. And this was originally not to actually publish it in the end, but only for me to have this, this way of saving my ideas. But then when I did this to like 100 pages, I realized, you know, why don't you just write a book? And I was almost fascinated by how this idea has never before come into my head. Like I was sitting there looking at my Word document, and I realized, dude, this is it. This is exactly how you can make your ideas become something that's realistic, something where you will actually only need yourself and maybe some help. For example, you will need cover art. You will need to pay someone to draw your covers. And maybe you will need an agent or an agency or another opportunity to publish it. But all of it sounded like I could do 80 to 90% of the work myself and then invest some money on one or two people doing the rest. And I realized that's realistic. It is realistic. So I did it. I started. And actually, the first thing I ever wrote was the first concept for Backfire. I started writing it just like Faust back then. So more like a kind of dramatical theater script-like book. But then realized that, I wanted like a real book, like a novel that is not like this, not script-like, but really like people talking, but many descriptions in between, and you know how a book works, right? Not every book, obviously, but most of them. So I started like this again, and I had many ideas who I scrapped in the end. The ideas who I scrapped now, which I scrapped in the end. And it probably took me like 3 or 4, I think it was 3 whole restarts of Backfire to finally find my way of how I want to write the book. So I did, and it took me quite a while. I think it was 2014 when I found like my writing style. And from then on, it took quite another while to publish it, because it was actually, I think I started writing the final concept in 2014 and finished in 2016. But there were so many things ongoing that I couldn't publish it until late 2020. So even 4 years later from when it was actually finished. But there were so many things I changed, both in writing style as well as in content. I swapped characters around and added some things, deleted some things. The first versions I printed myself, or let a shop print them for me and gave them to friends to get some feedbacks. And then when I think in 2018 there was this final edition where I said, this is the book now, I can publish it now. I was asking lots of people to publish it, and here in Germany, this is a pain in the ass, I can tell. That was no fun at all, and it was, well, most of the time when I asked people to publish it, they were like, yes, I like the idea, I like the writing style, I want to publish it. If, and then there was the big if, I either had to pay a lot of money for them to publish. So I remember that there was this one agent, or whatever they are called, and I asked him if he wants to publish it. He liked it. He said, yes, I really want to publish it. And then he was like, okay, but it will cost you 2,500 euros. And I sat there, was looking at him, currently in university, and I was like, okay, thank you for liking my book. I will leave now, goodbye. Because of course I did not have that money, and I still don't. And then there were others who didn't take money, but they didn't like my way of publishing it, because Backfire is supposed to be a short novel series which has this character of a series. Like if you were watching, for example, a TV show, then one Backfire book would probably be like 1 or 2 episodes. And then there's one season consisting of maybe 1 to 5 books, which is then like 2 to 10 episodes. So no season has 1 book, right? Let's just say 5 books, which means 10 episodes, and that would be 1 season. And they would regularly be released over the span of a year. But, well, people didn't like it, and I can understand that they didn't like this way of publishing, but this is how I wanted it. So in the end, I decided to just publish them by myself. Which was not too hard, actually, because Amazon has good opportunities to do that. But promoting yourself is extremely hard if you don't have the resources. Like, you can promote yourself very, very well if you have good contacts and money. But if you have no actual contacts to literature people or big influencers or whatever, and you don't have the money to start big promotion campaigns and so on, it's extremely hard for self-publishing. But still, this is what I decided for. And this is what I will probably do for quite some time now, because however, well, where did I actually want to go with that thought? I was not trying to speak about Backfire, but in general about what is writing to me and how does it affect my free time. You know, writing, when you are not doing it as an actual job, because let's be honest here, with the sales I currently have, it can barely be called a job. Like, not at all. I think of my first book, of Backfire, I sold like 100 copies, and I'm currently not really allowed to speak about how much I earn, but, well, trust me, it's not much. And considering the costs behind that, so for example, I had to pay, obviously, for the cover art. I have a very, very, very nice cover artist. She is a very nice person and she's very talented, but of course quality has its price, so I had to pay for it, and I will probably never get this money back from sales because it's expensive and you don't get much money from self-publishing books if you are not very lucky. At least this is from my experience. But this is also not what I'm here for. Like, I don't want to get rich by selling books. Of course, I would really, really, really be happy if there were more sales to it. but this is more a personal thing. I really love to share this story, and I would love to discuss about this story with people. And I would really love to, hear people be excited about the next book. And I experienced that, and people ask me, when is the next book coming? I'm so excited how it goes on, what happens next. And this is a real good feeling. This is what I'm doing this for. I'm not doing this for the money, but for sharing. But of course, since there are so many costs behind it, I have to sell it because I'm not rich and I kind of at least want to get to close to a plus minus zero, which is very, very difficult already. Okay, writing in my free time. This is where I wanted to go by saying this is not really, or this cannot really be considered a job for me at the moment. I am actually full-time university student, so I barely get the time for writing. And sometimes I do have the time, but then, being creative is nothing you can really do by a schedule. If you have work to do for your job that just has to be done, and it is work like work, then you have your time schedule. You can do it by the time, and even if you don't have the motivation, you can still do it if you kick yourself in the ass and just do it. But for creative jobs like this, it's different. Of course, you have your time schedule. So, for example, if you say you want to publish a book each and every 6 months, then of course you have your deadline of until then I need the money for the cover. Until then, the German version has to be finished. Until then, the English translation has to be finished, which I'm also doing by myself. I'm not paying anyone to translate it. I'm doing this all by myself. And I have to send all of the data to Amazon by then and then and then, so I can publish it on that day. So pre-orders go online on that day, and the book can finally be published and released on day XYZ. However, this is a very long process, and usually before publishing a book, it has been finished for a long time. So like the first book, I said it before, Backfire 1 was published in December 2020, but it was already finished in late 2016, and the final edition, so to say, was finished in like mid 2018. Also the second book, 20 Hands, which just released a couple of days ago, was also already finished, I think in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, but it got released on June 15, 2021. And the next book that will be released next winter, so Backfire 3, so to say, was finished in, I think, December 2020, if I'm not mistaken. So books are always finished at least a year before getting published, at least. Because of course, the outline of your general idea of the book has to be finished far, far, far before that, because you need to plan ahead, you need to plan the story ahead, you need to plan the release ahead, you also need to plan the cover, you need to create a briefing for your cover artist, and you obviously need to know about your own content before you tell someone about the art. Like you can't just say, hey, it's Backfire 3, make a cover. No, you have to say it's Backfire 3. It's mostly about this and that character, and this and that happens at this and that location. So I could imagine it looks like that and that. And what do you think? How do you think this could work as a cover? But when the writing starts, it sometimes gets very frustrating, because actually writing is so much fun to me. I love it. I really, really love it, and I'm really passionate about it. There are sometimes phases in my life where I do nothing else over a couple of days, instead of just waking up, going to the computer, writing, going to sleep, waking up, writing, going to bed, and so on. Because I have this, well, this kick of creativity, and it's so much fun. But sometimes all of a sudden there's a low where you know how it's going on, but you can't really come up with any idea on how to proceed, because you obviously, having ideas is not enough for writing a book. You need to know how you want to show these ideas, and obviously in a book how you want to explain all of it, and you need to do this all by yourself. And sometimes I am, for example, at chapter 29, and I'm very, very excited for writing chapter 30, but there is this one last part of chapter 29 that I just can't finish, because I really don't know how to express what's happening at this moment. And sometimes I reach these lows, and this is so frustrating, because I would love to keep writing, and sometimes I have the time to do so, but then I can't continue because there's this one part that I just can't get rid of and have to finish before continuing. Now people could say, okay, why don't you just skip the part for now, continue with the rest, and then come back to it later? I personally don't like that, because of, well, there are several reasons why I don't like this. First of all, I like to work chronologically. So also when I write, I don't know, work for university, I really, really, really dislike starting with chapter 4, then going back to chapter 2, then to 3, then to 1. I hate this. I need to follow a structure, a chronological, logical structure. And this is also for books. I cannot just skip a part and start the next chapter and then come back to it. It feels weird. It doesn't feel good. I don't know. And apart from that, I love to play with with expressions that are ongoing. So, for example, if there is a certain sentence at the end of chapter 29, then I might need exactly that expression or a hint to that expression later in chapter 31, for example. So I sometimes feel like I cannot keep on writing, because I like to, well, build up expressions over chapters. And also details. If, for example, at the end of chapter 29 there would be a detail that I did not yet come up with, but that needs to be expressed again in chapter 35, then I would need it by the time of writing chapter 35. Of course, you can always add more information to chapters that are already finished, always. But sometimes when you read it, you feel that this is kind of unnatural. So I love to, well, finish a chapter as a whole before going to the next one. Of course, sometimes I change some expressions and add some minor details, but I could not add a big new scene to a chapter, because, well, then it would need some, well, a later chapter would need to address that. And then after changing one chapter, I would have to change all the chapters afterwards because of this change. And this is why I always try to finish a chapter as a whole, and that I'm really satisfied with the chapter before going on to the next one. And I remember I had this in Backfire 3, which is called Voices of Violence. And there was, I remember this. There was one scene, and I was stuck at this scene for months. I think for 3 or 4 months, I could not keep on writing because I just had no idea at the moment on how to express one certain scene and how to get to the next important story point. But I could not skip it. My brain wouldn't allow to skip this part and go on to the next one, which was so frustrating. And this happens a lot. But I think this also happens a lot because I have so many other obligations. Because, as I said before, right now I'm not doing writing as a full-time job, but I'm more like a full-time university student. So this is where most of my time goes. And yeah, maybe this is why, well, for university, I also have to do lots and lots and lots of writing. And this is perhaps why sometimes I have these lows, because I'm just also sick of writing, even though it's so different. But I would love to put more time into writing my books than some university works. But these obviously have to be done because I also have a passion for what I'm studying. However, writing does take lots of times. It is not really just a hobby. You know, hobbies take time. For example, I was for some time part in a volleyball club, and that was, I think, like twice or I think it was once a week, a couple of hours of training in the evening. And I was also part of a cheerleading team, which was also twice a week training for a couple of hours. And this was a hobby. This was not like professional, but it was a hobby. And, well, it was limited in time, you know, because there were these perhaps 2 evenings a week that took perhaps 4 hours each or so. And but writing takes more time than that, lots and lots and lots more time than that, because if you want to finish a book, well, you have to work for it, obviously. And I don't know if someone of you has ever written a homework for university where you like have had to hand in an essay that was like 30 to 40 pages long. You know how much time this takes, and not just to write it, but also to do all the research and get your ideas and do the formatting and stuff. And this is also what is important for writing books, because writing books is not just having ideas and writing them down and maybe doing some artistic explanation thingy around it. No, it's also lots of research and lots of formatting, so lots of technical stuff and lots of kind of scientific stuff behind it. So for example, when I was, let me think about it again, when I was, okay, this is something that I haven't published yet, but there's a novel I'm writing at the moment, which is called Jill Faith, which is, as I said in my introduction YouTube video, it is some kind of parodic approach of redefining James Bond, so 007, but with a female protagonist and some, well, yeah, different features, let's say it like this. And the first book of these is set in the 1980s and in a very certain city, in a very specific city, which also exists in real life. So writing the first 3 pages of the book, where I was just, well, it wasn't the first 3 pages, I think it was page 4 to 6, and I was explaining where the protagonist was heading, and of course I was like, okay, I can just explain something about the city, but no, this had to be very accurate to the time. So she was heading there by train. So I had to do lots and lots of research how trains worked at that time, how trains worked at that specific country at that time, and at that specific town or city at that time, then how the city and the train station looked at that time. So I think only researching for these first 3 pages for this one scene at a train station, I did more research than for the last university homework I was doing, which had 30 pages academic stuff, important stuff, lots of research as well. But yeah, it is work. And this also counts for writing Backfire. I cannot just come up with anything. Things have to be explained, or things have to be logical on a scientific base. So you have to do some research. Otherwise, your book or your story just won't be authentic. And I think this is what many people forget when they are thinking of authors as, workers. When they are reading books and stories, they sometimes, I think, really forget the work and all the research behind it. Maybe people think about, wow, this must have been so hard to publish it and to format it and to draw the cover and so on and so on and so on. But there is just so much more to it, and it takes time, which is why I always say it is a hobby, but it is an extended hobby. Okay, as the final chapter for this podcast, I want to address where I want to go in the future. First of all, as I said before, right now I'm currently just publishing the Backfire series, which is a short novel series. But also there are lots of large-scale novels in the work. So novels that are not just like these 50 to 100 pages, but, actually thick books. These, of course, take even more time to finish, especially when you are a student, you're not doing it full-time and so on. So I want to expand on that, not just writing these short things, but also like what people really think of when they hear the word novel. Not light novel, not short novel, but novel. Also, I want to vary a lot in content. Backfire is all about post-apocalyptic survival, and even Joel Faith is still in a more modern setting with, guns and tools. However, I want to expand on times and genres. Like there is a concept for a space adventure, there's a concept for a horror book, there's a concept for a medieval fantasy thing with a twist, and there's also a concept for a kind of pirate-ish like story, but there's also a concept for a children's book, and also a concept for an alternate history book set around the time of before the first millennium. And yeah, I really want to vary a lot in content. So no one can ever say, oh, that's the one who writes all these post-apocalyptic stories, or all these modern day stories that are no. I want to do everything because I have ideas for everything, and I will see if some of them maybe will work out better and some of them will work out worse, and maybe some of them are being scrapped and never released, and maybe some of them get a sequel and a prequel or not. And this is also very dependent on you. You are currently listening or reading or whatever, who are consuming my books. Because obviously, even though I want to, well, stay loyal to myself so that I will write what I have fun writing with and what I enjoy writing, what I like, stories where I see story potential for the future. But it's also very, very important to keep in mind that there is readers out there. And if people, for example, really dislike Backfire, then maybe one day I have to stop it before, well, earlier than I actually wanted to stop it. Or maybe if I don't know, if I publish Jill Faith and people really like it, then I have to think about maybe a sequel would be possible, or a prequel. If that works, of course. If that works with the story. If not, I could, well, focus on writing a similar one, like a same genre, different story. What is my overall goal? I don't really have one. As I said before, I want to have fun, and I want people to have fun with it. So in the first place, I want to write stories for pure entertainment with some criticism. However, if there were to be an opportunity of me to actually become a full-time author, I would grab it, for sure. This would be my dream come true. Even though I kind of have my doubts that will ever happen, but just imagining really focusing my time, most of my time, on writing on a larger scale, that would be a dream come true. But we will see. At first I have to, well, get some things done and finish university and publish a couple more books to raise awareness about me. Hello, I'm here. And we'll see where that leads. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you all for tuning in. If you have any questions or any suggestions on what the next topics could be, feel free to use the comment section below. And yeah, that's it for today. And read you soon. Bye-bye.